Good afternoon, I'm Milton Walker. Welcome to TVJ's special coverage of a habeas corpus application on behalf of Vybz Kartel, whose given name is Adidja Palmer, Sean Storm Campbell and Andre St. John. This today was not a bail application. Let's get that clear. The Supreme Court Judge Justice Andrea Thomas has ruled that dancehall entertainer Vybz Kartel and two of his three co-accused should remain behind bars pending the decision of the Court of Appeal on whether or not they will be retried for the murder of Clive Lizard Williams. Justice Thomas delivered a written judgment a short while ago. Now, attorneys for the men had filed a habeas corpus application requesting their release following the recent Privy Council decision to quash their convictions. Today's activity in the court, as I said, was not a bail application. It was a habeas corpus application on behalf of Kartel, Sean Storm Campbell and Andre St. John, which was heard before Justice Thomas yesterday. Now, also outside, special security measures were activated at the Supreme Court in downtown Kingston ahead of this afternoon's ruling on whether or not Vybz Kartel and two of his three co-accused would be released. They were armored personnel carriers. Members of the police SWAT team had created a cordon around the court. Now, to talk to us a little bit more about the situation outside the court is Kirk Wright. Kirk?
Yeah, listen, you're correct with what you said. Security have been beefed up outside the court. We saw a number of armored vehicles from the Jamaica Defense Force and the JCF. In fact, I should tell you, when it just started in court, we had much more journalists on location than we had supporters. But as time passed, more supporters gathered. And one thing, though, most of the people here were thinking that it was a bail application. They're expecting that to see Kartel released. So, lots of times they had to be telling that it wasn't a decision to decide if he will be granted bail. They're still here. His lawyer just came out of the courtroom, and there was a rush a while ago by the supporters here to get just to talk to his lawyer, who indicated that he had nothing to say. We actually tried talking to him, but he sped away. I'm at the court now, and the crowd is getting larger. People are anticipating, milling around, I'm sure, hoping to see Kartel, based on what they've been saying, that they're hoping that Kartel will be released and that they're looking for him. There's still lots of media people out here trying to get interviews from supporters. But apart from that, the security forces are here, and they're keeping a watchful eye on the crowd. Most of them now are gathered to the exit of the courtroom, where it's expected that Kartel and his co-accused will be let out into the van to be taken back to their holding place.
All right, Kirk, thank you very much. We expect the security presence to be maintained for a little while, perhaps until the men have left the area in the Department of Corrections vehicle, or the police vehicle, which will be taking them back to the correctional facility where the men are being held, pending the Court of Appeal hearing, which will be next month. Now, as we told you earlier, today was a habeas corpus application on behalf of Vybz Kartel, Sean Storm Campbell and Andre St. John. The Supreme Court Judge Justice Andrea Thomas has ruled that the dancehall entertainer and two of his three co-accused should remain behind bars pending the decision of the Court of Appeal on whether or not there will be a retrial for the murder of Clive Lizard Williams. Justice Thomas delivered her judgment a short while ago. Now, the main issue which was to be determined today was whether or not they were being unlawfully detained, hence the habeas corpus application. The judges says the charges still remain, and that the Commissioner of Corrections is not holding them in breach of their constitutional rights. In refusing to release the applicants today, the Commission of Corrections was also not, or the judge ruled that the Commission of Corrections was not acting in breach of the Corrections Act. She says that the appeal is not finished until the Court of Appeal decided on the issue of whether or not there should be a retrial. So the issue at hand was the habeas corpus application, which was filed by attorneys for Kartel, Sean Storm Campbell, Andre St. John, which was heard before Justice Thomas yesterday. Today, she delivered her judgment on the matter, and that they should remain in custody pending the Court of Appeals hearing into whether or not there will be a trial. And how did we get to this spot? Remember, the men went to the Privy Council, Jamaica's final Court of Appeal. The Privy Council quashed the conviction earlier this year, but it ordered the Court of Appeal, sent it back to the Court of Appeal to determine if there should be a retrial. The Court of Appeal has set those dates. That's going to be, I think, sometime in June. And ahead of those hearings at the Court of Appeal, the lawyers for the men filed an habeas corpus application in the Supreme Court to get them released. It was not a bail application. But of course, we're going to get much more from our legal analyst, Dion Jackson Miller, who was in court. Dion is out now. Dion stayed for the entire judgment, not just to hear that they won't be released. And Dion, I think we may have lost the connection. This is live TV, so things that happen. Dion, good afternoon. Can you just sum up for us what happened in court and why the men were not released?
Okay, well, I'm actually, the judge left the courtroom just a short while ago. I'm actually waiting to get a written copy of the judgment because she gave quite a detailed breakdown of her reasons. As you said, in short, Kartel and his co-accused will not be released before the Court of Appeal has decided whether there's going to be a retrial or not. So the judge looked at a number of issues. It started out by looking at the issue as to whether the decision of the Privy Council that their convictions had been quashed and that the Court of Appeal was to decide on a retrial, did that translate into an order for them to be released? And she decided that that did not, in fact, so translate. She looked at whether or not the appeal had been determined, and her decision was no, the appeal has not finished. It is not going to be finished until the Court of Appeal makes its final decision. Since the appeal has not been determined, therefore, she said that the men are, in fact, being held lawfully in custody because the Commission of Corrections has not received any order from any court to release them. She looked at the issue of whether the charges remain and decided that, yes, the charges are still valid. So the men are still charged. Having looked at that, she then looked at whether, in fact, they would be eligible for bail. So she looked at the new Bail Act, and she looked at the fact that the Bail Act says that to be eligible for bail, while you are waiting for your appeal to be decided, you would have to have been on bail before you were convicted. These men were not on bail before convicted. She also pointed to another provision in the Bail Act that says that people who have been convicted for murder are in any case not in the category of people who could be considered for bail pending appeal. So as a result, they wouldn't be eligible for bail. She then looked at the fact that this was a habeas corpus application. Habeas corpus literally means bring the body. So bring the body before the court. It's usually used in circumstances where people are being unlawfully detained. And she said a habeas corpus application like this can't be used to circumvent the proper processes of the court. And that in this particular case, the only court who can make a decision at this time in relation to the liberty of these men is the Court of Appeal, because that is where the matter now is. So in short, Milton, to end as we began, no, the men, Kartel and his co-accused, are not going to be released before the decision of the Court of Appeal as to whether they should be retried or not.
Okay, Diana, and just quickly, there's no possible legal measure or action that his lawyers can take. Essentially, now the next stage is the Court of Appeal hearing into whether or not there will be a retrial.
Well, the retrial, the decision as to whether there should be a retrial, the Court of Appeal is going to start hearing that. I believe it's next week, in fact. So we can wait to see whether or not, because I haven't had a chance to speak to the attorneys yet. So I'm not sure what it is their next move will be. It's always possible to appeal decisions, but given the, the timing in this particular case, I don't know what they're going to decide to do. I haven't spoken to them yet.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Dion Jackson Miller. We'll have much more on our radio program Beyond the Headlines and, of course, in primetime news. But just to recap, special measures were in place today as the Supreme Court judge delivered a ruling in the habeas corpus application for dancehall entertainer Vybz Kartel and 2 of his 3 co-accused whether or not they should remain behind bars pending the decision of the Court of Appeal on whether they are to be retried for the murder of Clive Williams. Justice Thomas delivered her written judgment some time ago in the Supreme Court in downtown Kingston. Attorneys for the men had filed a habeas corpus application requesting their release following the recent Privy Council decision to quash their convictions. Today's activity in court was not a bail application. It was a habeas corpus application on behalf of Kartel, Sean Storm Campbell and Andre St. John, which was heard before Justice Thomas yesterday. Now, as you heard from Kirkwhite, special security measures were activated at the Supreme Court in downtown Kingston ahead of this afternoon's ruling, and we saw armored personnel carriers and the police SWAT team were deployed down there to create a cordon around the court. But of course, we'll have much more on this story in our bulletin at 7 o'clock primetime news, and we'll break it all down for you what it means in primetime news. So stay with us. I'm Milton Walker. Good afternoon.